We are back. Hello, friends. So we started chatting and then I was like, I'm just going to hit record because we were getting going. So today we are talking. Oh, first it's me, Christina, Coach Jess and Coach Tyler today, which, back to having three of us. And, we're going to talk about, chronic undereating and why it's keeping you from getting to where you want to be, which sucks because a lot of people think it is the way, and then it leads to some trouble. So let's jump into what we were just saying, because Jess was saying how it's a big part of our client load, is women who are like 40s, 50s, right? Is that what you see? Like,
yeah, like around mid 30s, but like mid to late 30s, 40s, 50s. A lot of my clients, women who have come to me wanting to lose weight. And then when we get down to how much, activity that they're doing, but also how much they're actually consuming, when we get down to it, their body or where their metabolism is sitting and how much food they're actually consuming relative to the amount of activity that they're doing, their body is just not ready to enter a deficit, whether it is chronic undereating, like you mentioned, and a lot of times they just don't even know that they're eating this little, or that the amount that they're eating isn't enough, let's say. Because when I talk to them about it, it's like, okay, let's say you are a 5'3" female who's around 40-ish, and you're consuming 1,500 calories on a daily basis. You also do like some type of boot camp class or cardiovascular, like more higher intensity for around an hour, probably 3, 4, 5 times a week. Plus, I find a lot of times they're pretty active individuals anyways. But they feel soft. Is that, I don't really like using that term, but like, yeah, they just feel soft. They don't feel,
I hear that, like squishy, soft, like,
jiggly.
I mean,
like they just don't feel toned, right? Like they don't have that muscle tone that they're looking for. But when I talk to them about, how much they're actually consuming and what we might need to go down to in order to get into a deficit, it's like, I actually, now, Christina, I use your term. I use the sad calorie land, because I feel like that just speaks so like it's sad calorie land. And then also I find a lot of time, just because they haven't been consuming a lot of food or not a lot of food, sorry, their metabolism has slowed down to the point of just being able to maintain on a low amount of food. They've also lost a lot of muscle mass in that process, and their body isn't ready to go into a calorie deficit to create the shape that they want, because they just don't have the muscle mass there to support it.
Yeah.
It's hard. Like that's hard mentally to be like, hey, this is the situation. Like I get it.
Right. And then the time involved, I think, is the really hard part, because if we're looking at years of that, which usually we're not even looking at just like 1 to 3 years of those kinds of habits, especially. And, so what I think of it as, and like even Vic, so, Tyler had made a comment about how we'd be surprised by how many men it is too. But Vic and I talk about this all the time. And I think it's kind of like we were at the younger end of this like time, and then there's the people who are like adults at the point, but we call it like the slim fast generation, where like, do you remember the pre-made slim fast cans? And it was chocolate royale or like whatever, and it was so good. Like we were talking about them yesterday because we love the Premier Protein ones, and Vic was like, I just really miss the cans of slim fast.
I feel like you can still get them.
But I never see them anymore. So I'm going to hunt them down, because I was like, I'm curious what the macros are on those. Like, is it just protein? But, I grew up with those around, and that was like what you lived off of. And then it was like aerobics and everything. Right. And like, so I feel like it was that generation where it was all you have to do is drink 3 cans of Slim Fast a day. And then you can have one snack, and then you can smell some boiled chicken for dinner, and you'll lose weight. And like, that was like what was printed on the can, right? Like, here's your meal plan. And it was like very low,
including the smell of the chicken.
including the
Yeah.
smell of your boiled chicken. Right. And so no wonder, like it was so pervasive, I feel like, and it just set us up to where we're not talking about just a handful of years of where this has affected your body, but I mean, that's damn near my entire life. And we're talking like decades for a lot of people where they've tried to stick to this really low place and then their body is completely used to it. And then no wonder they run into difficulties, right? So, Tyler, what have you seen with like men that get stuck in that under eating place?
Yeah, I mean it's kind of the same idea. Like honestly, like I see them and there is no muscle, right? There is maybe still an excess amount of body fat despite eating at low calories and kind of this or the skinny fat look too. I will see a lot where it's like, okay, like, yeah, you are lean, and they're saying they need to lose more body fat, but I'm like, hey, we might need a little bit more muscle. So, I think what it is like everyone has this general idea of what to do to lose body fat, but we're missing a lot of that nuance. And I think too, like, for wherever it's come from, people just have in their mind that eating more calories is just bad across the board, no matter what. And I don't like, I mean, I'm sure we could dive into where that has come from, but I just noticed that so much. And people are also like, even guys, they're like, I cannot be this weight, or I cannot gain weight, or I cannot do this. And, I think that was a fairly surprising part because I've never had food issues in my life. Like, my first coach was Paul. Like, so like I've never been through these phases of under eating, things like that. So, when I started coaching a lot more males, 30s, 40s, 50s, like I don't think I was necessarily expecting a lot of this, but over the last year or so, as I have coached more and more, like I'm running into guys eating 12, 13, 1400 calories a day. And it's like, whoa, like, where's this coming from? This is not a great thing for us. I'm like, a typical male, like if we look at a bell curve, a typical male BMR is around 1600 calories. So your basal metabolic rate, the amount of calories required just to survive, if you just laid there, that's the amount of calories your body would need just to kind of keep processes going. And you're eating under your BMR, like this is not a great place to be, not just in terms of wanting to lose body fat, because now we're looking at having to go even lower, but also just in terms of overall health and hormonal health and all of these processes that we need just to be healthy and to live, not let alone just lose body fat at a high consistent rate whenever we do get there. So having that discussion has been quite something. And so I'm pretty sure I've said this in a few other pods, and so I always kind of bring this up to them. I'm like, there's a reason it's called bodybuilding, right, and not body dieting. Like, I know we're not wanting to step on stage, but there's a reason some of the best bodybuilders in the world just they don't diet very often, right? And so having that discussion can be tough because they can be scared to eat more food. They may not know how to eat more food without it being almost not, I want to say binge, but like a weekend warrior type, right? Where it's like, hey, like I eat super low during the week and then it's pizza and beer on the weekends. And so that can be a pretty hard thing to navigate as well. So yeah, I'm excited to talk about this topic today.
Yeah, I think like why this is such an important topic that we're bringing up is, yeah, okay, like obviously we're in the health and fitness industry. We're in the jobs of helping people look better, right? Like truly, but we also want you to feel better. We want you to feel better now. We want you to feel better in 5 years from now, in 20 years from now. We want to help and guide and educate our clients on just health and wellness. And a big part of why chronic undereating can be so dangerous, not to like jump scare people, but dangerous, is that long-term health aspect of your BMR, like eating under your BMR. So now you're catabolic, like you're losing muscle mass just as you age, like naturally, but now your body is more susceptible to losing more muscle mass, right? So getting even more skinny fat, if we want to use that term. And bone density loss, right? Your tendons just starting to, like, we're not supporting the body in the ways that it needs for longevity, to stay pain-free, to not fall down. Right? Like there's loads of reasons why this can be very dangerous, other than, you know, not being able to diet, right? Which that's not super dangerous unless you are obese or diabetic or whatever, then obviously. But I think that is the big thing here that people really don't understand or think about is, well, what about 5, 10, 15 years down the road when you're needing surgeries all the time because your bones and joints hurt because you can't support yourself? When you now have osteopenia or osteoporosis or like arthritis and all of these things, just due to the fact that you haven't eaten enough food to sustain and like help support your body through just living. I think that's my biggest thing. But I understand that, like you said, it's really scary to move past what you've always kind of used as that benchmark of, oh, I'm eating less, I'm okay, right? Like that safety zone.
Right. And we talked to a lot of people who, I mean, I'll talk to some women where they're like, oh, well, that day was terrible. I try to stick to 1,200 calories because I know that's what I'm supposed to do. And I'm like, I'm surprised by how much I still hear it. Yeah. But there's still a lot of information. Like I just had somebody on the phone on Monday who mentioned she had done that Optivia, is that what it was called? I think we've talked about that one before. That was the diet where you're like, you pay for the meals, but they add up to like 1,000 calories per day. But they're expensive and
rip off.
Yeah. So she was like,
go to the grocery store for 1,000 calories. Like that's, a bag full of carrots.
Yeah. Right. And I mean, you probably get more volume than those providing, right? But, so we had talked about how she had done all of these different things to try and get the weight off. And the part that I find that can be like really dangerous, and not just physically, but mentally. And the thing with the physical part, we can fix that if we put like diligent effort into stuff, and like we can fix that quicker than we can fix the mental damage done from trying to hold yourself to the standard of, well, I'm supposed to eat no carbs, I'm supposed to not be hungry, I'm supposed to be this person who doesn't, they think that, oh, well, I'm just not tough enough, or like whatever it is, like I don't want it.
Yeah. I don't have enough grit. Right. It doesn't like blah, blah, blah. Like it's like self-deprecating.
Right. Yeah. And so then I try to get into a conversation about like, what have we accomplished if you get to a place where you've gotten super, super thin and you can't enjoy anything around you, except for the fact that maybe you get to report that you weigh this certain number, but like, are you really walking up to people and like saying that, like handing out a business card that says, hey, by the way, I finally weigh this much? Like nobody's doing that. You can't enjoy the things around you if you're in this like under eating place, right? Like you can't go enjoy like a meal of bread and wine, like stuff like that, because you probably had to cut all of that out. And so at this point, like, are we thriving in life or are we just surviving? And almost always it's paired with, I'll ask, well, how many times, like, what does your activity look like? How many times per week are we working out? Well, 4 to 6, but the goal is 6 and I do try to make it 7. And then that's when I'll be like, okay.
And I should do this. And it's a lot of like shoulds and like things that they feel like they have to do. It's like just like this negative connotation towards the work that may or may not be required for their goals. And then like, if they don't hit what they think they're supposed to hit, which I don't know who has told them this, they're like a loser human being and worthless.
Right. And what ends up happening then, right? So we try to hold ourselves to this terribly low calorie diet. We try to do these workouts that are every single day. And majority of the time, they're heavily weighted towards the cardio, right? Or like, oh, well, I'm doing sets of like 20 to 25 with weights because I want to get toned. I don't want to get too big.
That's for
And
losing weight, right?
right. But
I'd love
that's
to get
where,
too big. That'd be cool.
oh my, and I feel bad when I say, because I always try to make sure it doesn't come off the wrong way, right? But I'm like, there's literally zero chance in your life at 1200 calories, no matter how heavy you try to go away, like lift, you're not going to all of a sudden sprout like bodybuilder muscles. Like I truly wish I could accidentally wake up and be like, shit, it happened. Like, and it can't just sneak up on you, you know? And so they try to hold themselves to these standards. It doesn't work out. And then almost every time I talk to somebody who gets stuck in this routine, it means that they then spend, 3 to 5 days, like binging their face off with foods that they're not allowed to have when they're on that diet. And then, they don't do any sort of activity. They beat themselves up. They are like really hard on themselves. And then we start it all over again. And that's when it's like, and their answer a lot of the times will be like, I just need somebody to hold me accountable to actually do the things that I know I need to do. And I'm like, but what if that's exactly not what you need to be doing? And we need to try something completely different.
Yeah. Yeah. And like, I'll even, start talking with these guys and we'll talk about just even where that sustainability is and, how closely are they actually sticking with that. And I think like once you actually then like kind of start to dive into it with that person, you'll kind of like they'll start realizing like, oh, like this isn't sustainable. This isn't something that I can do long term. Like sometimes with people, with the coach, I have found like they just kind of have to go through it with the coach to truly understand, right? Like, Christina, like you've used this, like you're the captain, right? Or sorry, you're the master navigator, right? Like you're here to give the best advice. And so like sometimes with people, I'm like, yeah, I don't think we should do this. And they're like, nope, I want to do it. And so at some point you have to be like, okay. And you have to really then discuss kind of that sustainability portion of like, can you do this 7 out of 7 days and hit these macros perfectly? Because that's kind of what is required for long-term sustainable fat loss. Like, we do need to do that. And so, having just even that discussion of like, okay, maybe Monday through Friday we can do this, but what about the weekends? What about if you want to go out on a date night or, it's football season. So what if you want to go have some wings and some beer?
Right.
Hey, guess what? If we're on 2,000, 1,800 calories, that's probably not going to be really that doable. And so like,
As a male.
yes, as a male. Yeah. And so you have to have that discussion of sustainability, with those people because life context matters as well, when it comes to talking about, these chronic low calories and are you actually following this? Or are we just kind of having this back and forth, like you mentioned, this yo-yo dieting of extreme calorie restriction. Well, now I'm binging and then this extreme calorie restriction. And now you're just not going anywhere. And like, so like, what's the point, right? Like if we truly want to get somewhere, we might have to do something a little bit different.
Yeah. And adherence is like the top thing for me as a coach. Like what is going to help you be the most adherent to a plan? Because when you're not adherent, it's hard emotionally, which is understandable, right? Like we put ourselves to want to do this thing and we want to do it to the best of our ability. Like that makes sense. And that's where really low eating gets hard is that adherence level, right? Like you said, like, okay, I'm going to like, be really strict and be really strong for 5 days of the week, but then we get very mentally fatigued about eating that much food and we get very emotionally fatigued and physically. It just becomes harder and harder the longer and longer you do it. And so of course, also your body is going to respond really negatively when you have let's say even one single meal out, because like, you're right, you're probably going to overconsume on that meal, because you've been just physically and emotionally restricting yourself for, you know, however long. And then of course your body weight's going to go up. Like, you just ate more food. That doesn't mean that it's fat. It just means like, hey, we probably haven't taken a poop and we have more sodium, and we probably do have just like food sitting in our stomach, but your body doesn't know how to handle this because it is in this like binge restrict state where it doesn't know when it's going to eat again. So when it gets to eat, it's like, oh yeah, let's go as hard as we can, right? Like, if your body had thoughts. And so, right. So of course your body is going to like hyper respond like this. And that's one of the things that I talk to a lot of the clients about is, hey, if we can build your calories up a little bit more, or just eat a little bit more during the week, then it's going to help your body become more resilient to these social situations that you will encounter, because not going to them makes you a hermit and probably a sad human. Or maybe not, maybe you're an introvert like me, I don't know, but like once in a while I like to go out, you know, it's fine. And it makes you more resilient to these things that will happen. And you can either choose to be a social hermit and not take part of them, which then your quality of life goes down. So like, what are you improving your health and fitness for if your quality of life is in the toilet? Or you can take part in them, and maybe you won't be as all or nothing in these situations, you know, eventually, because you are eating more throughout the week. So then, you know, your body feels a little bit more safe, and emotionally you're not as, you know, restricted. And so you're able to handle these a little bit better. And it doesn't happen overnight. And that's why it is scary, because you will fuck up. And you will have these like desires to undereat when you overconsume or whatever, to like quote unquote get back on track. But yeah, it's like also your physical body's resiliency to these things can improve if we just up and like eat a little bit more, right? It's just, it takes time, and it takes patience, and it takes looking at a lot of different variables, not just the scale, as progress.
Yeah, no, I think the mental and physical resiliency is a big indicator of like, where are we at in a situation, and is this okay for you? Like, are we in a safe spot with stuff? Because if you're going out into a social situation, or even just, you know, it could be something as simple as like, well, the day got away from us, and so we had to go pick up fast food for the kids or something. And so it's not like an event, like a party or something.
Yeah.
But if you are always restricting yourself, it's really easy for just having to be in that drive-through to become an all or nothing situation, where maybe your whole day was going well, but then because you're in, like, it's right in front of you, and then it becomes that like almost like panicky, like, I should just get it because I don't know the next time I'm going to be here, and it's not that big.
Yeah, I was going to say, this is the only time I need it.
Right. Yeah. And it's like, look, McDonald's has been thriving in business for fucking ever. It's not going anywhere. And like, it'll always be there, and you can have it then when it makes sense with stuff. But if you get into that situation of where every time you go off track, you go like into the next country's track, and you're just completely gone, that's a huge sign that the lifestyle you're leading is completely off kilter and is not serving you well, because you shouldn't be living in that place. Now, if we've been like, we're at the end of a diet or something like that, I think it's pretty normal to have somebody slip up like at least once or twice when they are towards the end of a diet phase. You're getting to that place where diet fatigue is high, and you are in that like, oh my God, I haven't had it in forever kind of situation. Mm-hmm. But that's why I think it's also important to go into those, you know, having come from a place of where you were having it, and you're building up that mental resiliency, because, you know, what we hear a lot are the words motivation. I just need more motivation.
Oh yeah.
And you just need more willpower. And when it comes to something that is hardwired into your body's being to search out food and sustenance, like your body could give two shits about how much muscle you're walking around with. Like all it wants you to do is get through the day. And it doesn't care. I mean, to a certain point, it cares what your body fat percentage is. Like it wants to be even keeled and comfy and stuff like that. But your body's job is just to keep you going. And so, like, if you throw it into these situations and it's going to react with the like, yeah, go ahead, give it to me. Like if it hasn't had it, it's going to try and do what it can. And so relying on things like motivation and willpower when it comes to that stuff, I feel like it's not going to get you anywhere. And if you feel like you're constantly having to search those things out, then we probably need to add more calories in so you don't feel desperate routinely. And then the other thing Jess had brought up with like, and we talked about this last week with fat cells and like stuff like that and like body fat percentage. If you are somebody who's chronically under eating routinely, and even if you go out to a restaurant and you order like, you know, grilled chicken and some veggies or something like that, but at home you cook them very clean and you're not using stuff and all of that, at the restaurant they're sure as shit cooking that stuff in butter and making it taste good and stuff.
Lots of salt.
Oh yeah. It is totally possible you could put on body weight or body fat, like from going over in those situations. If your body is in a place where it's like desperate for it, oh, it's going to put it somewhere real fast because like Jess said, it doesn't know what it's going to get next. So it's like, ooh, I better store this up because tomorrow she's going to make me do 3 boot camp classes and walk 20,000 steps. And I need energy for that, you know? And so
just water.
Right, exactly. And then we're going to respond by flushing myself out with like a detox tea and like things like that, you know? And so that's where we can end up in a situation where maybe 4 or 5 days out of the week, you're eating your 1,000 to 1,200 calories and you're getting in all of your workouts and you're gaining weight. And that's because your body has downregulated to a Prius and you're very fuel efficient. And then you go and slam it with a bunch of stuff and it's like, hell yeah, and stores it in its fuel stores to have for next time. And we end up in this like place that is probably the most difficult weight to lose is once we've gotten there, even after a reverse diet.
Yeah, I was going to say something like I've seen it happens a lot in competitors when you get like really like shredded. In the reverse process, what happens a lot is body fat comes on, but it comes on in your midsection at first because that's your organs. Like that's your body being like, oh shit, okay, like I have the moment of being, you know, quote unquote safe, cool. I'm going to protect my organs. And so sometimes the body fat, if you are a leaner individual or if you are reverse dieting and you're needing to put on some body fat or you're doing this process like that can happen, is that you'll feel maybe more inflamed throughout your midsection. But like that's common. And it takes the body just some time to readjust and stabilize. Like it just takes time and it can feel very frustrating because it's like, well, why is this happening? Right. But it's truly because your body is like protecting itself around your organs. But it does redistribute over time if you are consistent. And that like circles back to like that whole adherence thing. Are you able to be consistent and adhere to a plan? Because if you just go up and down, well, when that body fat comes on, it's going to protect your organs. It's going to be like, holy shit, I don't know what's going on. Okay, belly fat, right? And you're right. That is the most difficult thing to get off. And so just again, like thinking down the road.
Well, it's because, like, I mean, when it comes to losing body fat, we don't lose body fat cells. They just shrink in size.
Right.
Right. I think people like need to understand that. But then when we come out of something like that, there is the possibility of creating new body fat cells if you are going nuts. And so you can run into that issue with that chronic under eating and your binge cycles. You might be creating those new body fat cells. That is a possibility. So again, maybe not to jump scare people like Jess said, but I think, I don't think it's a jump scare. That's just the reality of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, that's also, a big discussion I just now start having with my clients. It's like, I'm not saying this to like be a dick or like, try and scare you. This is just the reality of what you want. So maybe we need to adjust those expectations. And I think also, having the discussion of like energy availability with your clients too, and like what that means for, again, we kind of come back to the BMR and regular processes. And you talk about maybe like the female triad of like,
I'm gonna say something about the female triad.
I know. I've been like, where can I fit this into the discussion, right?
Yeah, perfect.
Like those are very important things to kind of like have that discussion, because I think a lot of it too with clients, I kind of had mentioned earlier, and how everyone has this general idea of what to do to lose weight, but there is a lot more to it than just eating less all of the time. And like so much of these type of things come into play. And I think just having that discussion with the client, having that education and going, yeah, like these are the things we do need to pay attention to, because these are important, again, not just to the fat loss process, but to your overall health process too. And so, yeah, going through all of that is so important. And making sure that we are having that energy availability to go through life, have good energy for our training, to support just our systems and our processes and our health and our lifestyle. To me, like that's so much more important than looking a certain way. Like, I'm quite a social person, and I had started a prep earlier this year. It was not going well. Like it just wasn't, like, because I felt like I was missing out on so much, and I was having to restrict myself so much, and I hated that. And so, yeah, that is, all of these things come together and into play, like when you're having that discussion of like, okay, like we're eating super low calories, how is this all fitting together?
Yeah, I feel like just to explain what the female triad is, it is the like interrelationship of menstrual dysfunction, so basically like amenorrhea or not having a period, low energy availability, so this could be like an eating disorder or chronic under eating, as well as decreased bone mineral density, so like osteopenia, osteoporosis. And this happens a lot with like young female athletes. I saw when I was coaching high performance sports a lot in synchronized swimming, this was very common. But it can be like in any sport, or it can also just happen to people who have more disordered eating habits or like under eating. And so we're just getting a larger female population who don't have a period, so they aren't ready to have a baby, which is a concern because your body is saying like, oh, I'm it's not safe enough to hold it. Like, house a child, grow a child, house a child.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. And now we also have early onset osteoporosis. It's like, just so that, because we threw that out there, but it's a, like, if you want to look it up on sports or PubMed, it's a concern. And I dealt with that a lot in my athletes, and just making sure that they eat enough. But anyways, I just want
to, I mean, in males too, right? Like you're looking
Mm-hmm.
at lower testosterone levels, like you are looking at a disruption to like your endocrine system, a potential like hunger signaling issues as well. Like you have, I've talked with some guys, like they're, very low calories, and they're like, well, I'm just never hungry. I'm like, that's not good. Like,
yeah.
That's like, oh, look at you.
I'm
like, that's not good. Your hunger signaling is off. I mean, hunger signaling is very, very complex, but like, if you're low chronic calories and you're not hungry, that's a red flag.
And yeah, when people are like, oh, I'm never hungry, like take it as like a badge of honor. I'm like, well, that's a red flag.
Right.
You should be hungry.
When people will be like, oh, but you know what? I usually don't even start eating until like 11 o'clock or 12. And like they've already told me they're having like stubborn weight loss issues or something. And then they'll say that they're not eating then because I'm just never hungry in the mornings. And I'm like, wow, our first batch of homework is going to be breakfast. And we need to turn that back on. And I think that just goes a lot to like the like just kind of like how society is, not just surrounding like food and fitness and like things like that, but the idea that like we're supposed to wake up and hit the ground running and go, be productive, get everything done, show up for everything that's needed, and like that kind of stuff until you've completely burnt out at the end of the day. And then here's your beer and your snack because you earned it. And so, right. And so then we ended up in this like just really messed up place where, you know, your body is so stressed out. And so with the stress and like, so you're like, so then that pivots into hormones, right? Which I'm sure. So Tyler brought up a little bit with the testosterone. Testosterone levels are an issue for women too, you know, and I feel like it got, for a while, everybody was talking about like estrogen dominance and like things like that. But I feel like in those conversations, it mostly surrounded like too much estrogen, like estrogen being the enemy in that situation. Like, oh, there's too much and it's bad. And yes.
Well, and a lot of times when the estrogen is high, it's because actually your progesterone has bottomed out. So
right.
there's
And
like
so,
inappropriate or not it's not the good relationship between your progesterone and estrogen. That's why it's estrogen dominant. Anyways, whatever.
right. Well, no, so exactly that. So, but in that conversation, instead of talking about the fact that women need testosterone and progesterone and stuff like that, it just became estrogen's so bad if you have too much. And it was like, you just got to get the estrogen out, is like how people looked at it. But I mean, I myself, after having prepped for like years in a row and stuff, after having been like things just wouldn't get back to normal. And like, I just didn't feel right. I went and got lab work done thinking for sure it was going to be a thyroid thing, because like the way it was adding up, I was like, that's probably what it's going to be. Like, I seem to be checking all of those boxes. Everything there was fine. My testosterone was a 3 out of, you're supposed to be, I think women are between like 18 and 45 is like our range. And I was at a 3. And like, so by the time I went through like doctors and everything to figure out like what the best steps were, who knows how but I wound up pregnant again. So, I haven't, because
ERT.
my body's just like, no matter what, we're making babies. And so I've been curious to see once I finish nursing Claire, because I haven't gotten my hormones tested because I don't know how much nursing would like alter them. But I'm curious to see if it's still in that like place, because that's when like my doctors at the VA were like, okay, it makes sense for us to start looking into how we like fix this, because you need more testosterone. You need to be in that place. And that's where like a lot of people, a lot of women I'll talk to, especially in the like, you know, late 30s, 40s, 50s population, they're like, it's my hormones. That's why I can't lose weight. My hormones are messed up. And it's like, well, yes, that could very well be a part of it. But like when I had my blood work done, I was coming out of a dieting phase. And so that was something else to consider, where I was like, I was very lean. Like at 5'7", I was hanging out at like 132, which is like the very bottom of my, I'm not miserable. I had actually, Tyler, for the same reasons, I was in a prep and then had pulled out a couple months beforehand, because I was like, this is like the leanest I want to walk around in life, and I don't want to push past here. Like it was no longer fun. And so I had hung out there. But that was why I was like hesitant to do anything like medication wise to fix my hormones then, because I knew my body was in a relatively fragile state, being at lower calories and at lower body fat. And so a lot of times women will jump straight to like, well, I just need to go get HRT or pellets, or, you know, they're like, my holistic nutritionist told me that I need to start using these like 42
I layer your face.
like, you know, and it's just all these like things, but then they're like, but I also just really need your support in sticking to my 1,200 calories a day. And it's like, these two things could very well be working together. And then, you know, I always ask like, are we still getting our periods? Like basically, because now I'm seeing a ton of clients where at like 42, they're already perimenopausal, or they'll tell me they haven't had a period in a year already at like 42 and stuff. And so I started having that conversation with everybody. And if they're like, well, they're getting a bit longer when I do have my period, but then sometimes it'll go away for like 3 months, or it's very inconsistent. I'm like, well, then the last thing that we want to do is bring on more of that hormonal shift by stressing your body out, by doing way too much and eating way too little, because it's something that's already going to happen. And I mean, outside of just not getting my period anymore, I'm not eager for menopause. Like, I don't want to get there sooner than I have to. And so we have to start considering, like, am I making decisions in the name of being as small as possible that are also going to bring on all of these other things like the female triad and stuff like that, because and pull it onto you. And I feel like a lot of people will think like, well, because it's normally the female athlete triad is how you'll see it a lot, right? Yeah. And I'm not an athlete. Like, I'm not out here doing this and that. And they think like, it's not going to happen to me. And I'm like, it probably already has. Like, go get a DEXA. Let's look at your bones. That shoulder that hurts all the time for the last 7 years and you can't figure out why, and you're going to PT because your hip hurts, it might be related. You can't build a Lego tower without Legos. And like, that's your food. And so if you're putting one block on and then pulling another one off, no wonder it falls apart all the time. It's because you're not taking care of yourself.
I mean, unpopular opinion, but a lot of these like hormonal issues and like just things that we're talking about that people come to us with can truly, just a lot of it can be helped with proper lifestyle and nutrition.
And that doesn't necessarily mean supplements either. There's a place for supplements.
I'm not talking about supplements.
There totally is. No, it's like adequate energy balance.
Yeah. And I'm not saying that will fix everything, but like a lot of times proper stress management strategies and perception of stress, sleep, appropriate movement and training, and nutrition. Oh, and hydration, and like not stressing your body out all the time with alcohol. But a lot of these people who like Christina, you have alcohol probably like on a regular basis, but like you're also eating enough food and you're not at like low body fat levels, and like, like you're, again, it goes back to that body resiliency thing. It's like your body is in a safe place. It's like, hey, we're cool to hang out here and deal with these things. But yeah, I feel like that's just life, and it's not sexy. Like, that's why, I don't know, it's so hard for people to wrap their head around. They're like, well, what else can I do? It's like, hey, well, maybe you should just sleep a minimum of 7 hours a night instead of 5. Right. Like it's, or just, well, and eat more. But anyways.
Yeah. And I mean, too, like you have that, like, if you start eating more food, we actually maybe bring down your activity levels, your energy output is probably actually going to increase. You are now going to start to build muscle. You actually might start looking better, like the best you've ever looked, because you stopped actually eating low calories. And like, I do find that's a very hard thing for a lot of people to wrap their mind around, because again, like, it's been just beaten into us that more calories is bad, and like we just automatically believe that now. And so, you do have to break down a lot of those barriers. But like, I've had like so many clients, like, in like, we'll compare pictures and it's like, look, like, we've added X amount of food and it looks like you've lost 10-15 pounds. Like, look how amazing that is. Like, that's pretty cool. So, just even having that discussion of like, if we really just want to go on looks based and not even care about your health and this stuff we've been talking about, you're probably going to end up looking better with more food, and you get all the other benefits with it too. So I think that's also, for especially for those chronic undereaters, that's something to really consider.
Yeah, I actually had a client today check in this morning who honestly, she's doing amazing. But she came to me on eating lower calories, like not super low, but lower. Her consistency was struggling because she wasn't consuming a lot of calories, and her performance in the gym wasn't great. So I was like, okay, well, we're going to start eating more and changing up the way that she strength trained. And now she's so much stronger. She's gone on multiple, she lives in like she lives in Europe. So she's able, like, they travel a lot. She has a family with 3 kids. So she's done a bunch of travel, been able to navigate all of the travel. She's able to manage her home life, her family, etc. She's way stronger. She's so much more confident. She's also lost weight. And she's eating like 400 calories more a day. And I actually just had that conversation with her today about, hey, like a plan moving forward 6-8 months from now. She looks lifestyle lean, like fit. But I was like, hey, originally when you did come to me, you wanted to do a fat loss phase. I feel like, and also you are expressing that you are very, very happy and confident in your body right now and where we're at. But I said, hey, if we can continue to eat lots, train hard, navigate through the holidays, because I always like think about phases and progress and goals with, and navigating the holidays, right? It's almost the end of September, October, November, December. Let's continue to eat, train hard, enjoy this confidence, like travel, like just be strong. We have more muscle mass now, et cetera, through. And then in January, hey, let's chat. And maybe we want to do a planned fat loss phase, because the other thing is here, just because you want to lose body fat, that means maybe right at your moment in time, your body isn't ready to, but that doesn't mean that you can never lose body fat. Like, I'm confident in her, just in the way in that she's been able to execute and how her body has responded, that, in like March, we could do a fat loss phase if we really wanted, right? If the time is right and she feels like she wants to, and that type of thing. But we're going to touch base on that in New Year. But for now, she's actually lost weight, which was not the goal. We continue to feed her. She continues to train hard and find progress. And like, she's not an athlete, she's an athlete. She's not a competitor. She's a lifestyle athlete of mine. But like, my point here is that I'm saying, just because you cannot, let's say, just because your body isn't set up properly for all the reasons that we're talking about the chronic under eating now to do a fat loss phase, doesn't mean you never can. It just means that the goal time frame has shifted. And when you can get that through your head, and that sounds harsh, but like truly, when you can just get that through your head, that you have to take care of some things now. The goal doesn't need to go away. It just needs, the timeline needs to shift. And that's where a lot of people get really stuck in, I need this goal now. But it's like, hey, well, why is it different that you need it now if you want to sustain that goal? Because I'm assuming that you want to sustain that goal. So like, why does it really matter if you can't do that right now? Because it's just going to be like a bad idea. But we can do it in 6 to 8 months. And like, that's short. Like even a year and a half, that's short when you look at your entire time of just like life, right? Like in 2020, when I stepped off stage, I was like, hey, I'm going to take a 2-year off season. It's 2023. Like, I still haven't competed, and I'm okay with that. And I'm not in a rush, because it like I like having a plan, but that doesn't mean that the plan has to all happen right now, right? Like if you think about the tortoise and the hare situation, I would so much rather be the tortoise and like win in the long term and take the time now to make sure that everything is good than be the hare and actually be faster but lose.
Yeah. And so you made me think about I have a male client right now who has so much going on in life. Like his work is crazy and stuff. And then they have their second baby is due like any day now. I think she's due second week of October. So, and they have a toddler. And so they're getting very close. And we started working together during the first transformation challenge of this year. Saw like great success this whole way through. And we've continued to tighten up, like with a lot of flexibility and like grace through the year as he travels and stuff gets crazy. And so kind of like just rolling with adherence, going back and forth as like natural diet breaks, kind of where it's like, okay, it made sense that that happened. So like, we're not going to beat ourselves up for it. Let's actually kind of meet ourselves there and then see what we can accomplish. But we hit kind of a roadblock about a month ago, you know, with check-ins. I started getting a feeling where I was like, I think we're done now with like trying to chase any more fat loss. And so I had brought up the concept of reverse dieting, and we talked about that because it wasn't something, it was like a buzzword he had heard, but didn't really know what it was. And then this week I got the check-in that I feel like is inevitable when someone starts their first like dedicated reverse diet, where it's like, I'm finding the reverse diet hard because I know I need to get in more calories, and it seems like it's just a lot easier to just eat whatever I want. Like it's, you know, my head is leading me that direction, that it's like, and I mean, I, especially coming out of a hard diet phase, you know, it's so easy to convince yourself like, well, I should just have that because I mean, I'm supposed to get my calories up anyways. What's the big deal? And you start doing this like negotiation with yourself. You're like, I'm
supposed to be eating more.
Me.
Until you found yourself.
Trust me, I did that in my first and second prep reverse
You
diet.
find yourself a whole Oreo pack down and like 4 Pop-Tarts in, you're like, oh shit.
Like carbs are good.
Supposed to eat a whole thing of Oreos.
I've been there, yeah.
Right. And so I told him like, and you know, I think also because people just get to the fatigue of managing a diet and like tightly managed macros and stuff like that, then when you go into the reverse phase, it's really easy to be like, okay, well, I'm just not going to add stuff up until the end of the day. And like we've all just said, 100% we get it. That's part of the reason why I'm sure Tyler was like, meh, on the prep. It's the same reason I got to there where I was like, I don't want to deal with the first 3 months of that reverse diet. And, you know, so I had explained to him like the real trick when you're coming out of, and like his calories got pretty low for a guy, but because he's busy, it was one of those things where sometimes I'd be like, I need you to shove something quick in your face so that we don't end up in sad calorie land. Yeah. And so now we're working on getting him back up. And I was like, the key to us keeping everything you worked so hard for while we escape sad calorie land is you still have to be pretty diligent as you add stuff in. And you can't go from that like, well, I've been chronically under eating and it's time, not that he was, but like if you're in that situation and I know I'm supposed to eat more, and then double it because it's going to get real scary real fast. And there's people who did that, right? So Stephanie Buttermore, do you know who she is? So she did that really
that all-in diet or whatever she called it.
Yes, where she was in like what she considered for herself to be chronically under eating, but I feel like her version of chronically underfed is still twice as many calories as a lot of people that I coach, right? Because she's somebody whose metabolism is bonkers. And so she, like for her, she was like, I was only eating 1,800 calories and like, that's terrible. And I'm like, oh my God, like I wish I could get everybody there comfortably. So she did the thing where you just honor your hunger and you eat and like it works.
Tyler and I's face are like, because your hunger signals are fucked up. Like,
right.
You can't honor your hunger. Either you're not hungry or you're hungry all the time because your leptin and ghrelin are fucked. So like,
right.
And that's where the body fat cells and the body fat comes on your stomach, which we talked about.
Right. So she put on like 35 pounds or something like that, I think.
Easy.
It leveled out over time. So it's really interesting if you go back and kind of like watch all of it from a bird's eye view now that she's gone through the whole thing, and you can kind of go like through the process faster than like following through it over the course of like 2 years with her. And you know, the thing is, I feel like if you end up in like a medical situation, like that's what they're gonna be like, well, you gotta have all of this stuff, and like they're gonna slam you with things and stuff. Whereas if you can treat a reverse diet and the slow adding in of calories, if what's most important to you, because let's be real, we talked about a lot of health stuff here. Majority of the people are in this for the aesthetics, right? And the smaller pants.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to keep those or get there, you have to treat the introduction of higher calories with the same level of respect you want to treat the 1,200 calorie diet.
I like how you worded that.
If you do that,
yeah,
you'll be fine. It's still going to have that hint of discomfort that they want to enjoy in the harder diet when they're like, I wish I could just push through and stuff like that. And all of like, with all of this, I feel like it's important to say too that like we should not be like living to enjoy the discomfort of hunger all the time. Like, and if we're in that place, we need to have a whole different conversation and like bring other friends into this chat. But like of the
that might be a good one to have like Danica on.
Right. Or I mean, at that point though, you know, if I'm
a
talking
professional
to somebody who's there, I'm like, you need to stop putting the money into me, and we're going to start talking to like health insurance and get somebody else involved here. But as long as we're not in that place, you can work yourself out of that hole successfully and maintain those results if you can honor the reverse diet the same way you would a diet to get leaner. And like Tyler said, you can end up, or was it, I think you both told stories about getting leaner and like looking better with the more food. And I think a big part of that is that then you stop putting random shit in your mouth all day long. And so your calories, because you're better fed with what you're planning for, means you don't mindlessly snack on the things you don't pay attention to and add up. And then you can actually lose weight because you're actually eating less calories because your macro tracker has more calories in it. You're actually getting less than you were before. And so it's wonky and magic.
The key being,
yeah, I always
oh,
sorry, go ahead, Tyler.
Oh, I just said the key being eat more food.
Yeah. I mean, we're starting to talk about reverse dieting, which like we have a podcast on that and you can listen to that. But like whenever I talk about the concept of reverse dieting, I talk about, you know, like the first 4, 5, 6 weeks, depending on how lean or whatever, wherever that client is, it depends, but 4 to 5 to 6 weeks is like, hey, I just want you to keep eating what you're eating. We just need to eat more of it. And we're not going to add an untracked meal yet. And we're not going to add, or we add a like structured refeed meal or refeed day, but it's structured. Right. And then when we start incorporating untracked meals, it's like, hey, we're having an untracked meal. Cool. We're going to go have like steak, or we're going to go out for sushi. Like we chat a little bit about what that might look like. But I like how you worded it, Christina, with you're going to honor your reverse diet, at least the beginning part of it, with the same kind of mentality that you put into the fat loss phase, because it's those first few weeks where your body isn't resilient yet. It's not there yet. You're physically not there. You're hormonally not there. You're mentally not there, right? And so keeping that same like mentality surrounding that can really just help you get to that place where you are resilient again. So you can have an untracked meal and it not be affecting you, or you get like whatever, you can go to McDonald's and it not be a big deal. But yeah, it's usually that first like hump of time where your hunger signals are still kind of wonky and you're still going to want to, but it's that mental part too, is I find if you provide yourself at least with a little structure, that can actually help with your mental state going into it. Because if you just like fuck off, well, now you also have the like guilt, quote unquote guilt, which you shouldn't feel guilty, but you're probably gonna. So now you have that impacting you as well. And like, then it just starts the cycle all over again.
If you can have that structure too, like it's gonna get you back to normal faster, right? Like the more like you kind of get out of that, it's like the longer you're almost delaying getting to that point of resiliency and like normal hormone, like hunger hormone signaling and hunger signaling. Sorry. So yeah, like you just even knowing that in the back of your head too, it's like, well, the more I continue to indulge, the longer I'm just kind of delaying to where I can get to maybe indulging a little bit and not having any issues too. So yeah, you don't want to delay that process any longer than you have to, because if you like, it's, I find like the leaner you get, the longer you diet for, the effect the other way is going to be the exact same, right? Like, you know, the yin and the yang. For every reaction or action, there's an equal reaction. It's the same with dieting. Like the longer you diet for, the more extreme dieting you go, it's just going to bounce back the other way. That is just the way biological systems work. And so knowing that going into it too, it's like, okay, well, how much are we willing to go one way, because we know this other thing is coming and rebound with us as we come out of it.
Yeah. And that's why like communication and stuff is just so important in these situations too, for you to share like everything, right? You know, and not be in that place where it's like, because say you're in like even just the end of a dieting phase. So we're not coming out of like a lifestyle of chronically eating, or under eating, but you know, we're at the end of a diet. And if adherence and stuff like that is getting low, and you start noticing some of those behaviors that we talked about, like at the beginning, bring it up. Don't feel like it's something to hide or like not talk about, or like your coach is going to like shame you for it or something. It's a big signal that we probably need to work to make sure we're not dealing with that reaction that Tyler's talking about. And we can get ahead of it and we can minimize that time, because I would love for it to be an opposite and equal reaction. It's typically multiplied, you know, where we have to spend more time in the fixing phase than we did in how we got there. And so if we drag it on and we're struggling alone in that situation, it's just going to be that much more on the back end. And so the sooner that we know and the more that we know and to help there, the better we can end up when we're looking at that long range time plan of like, when do I want to get to this place? The more proactive we're being as opposed to reactive, it's just better overall.
And if your coach is shaming you, get a new coach.
Tell us and we'll sign up.
Right? For real.
And I think too, like, just kind of like to quick piggyback off that, like, there's nothing wrong with taking multiple dieting phases to get to your goal. Like, there's nothing wrong with going 8-10 weeks of dieting. Okay, now I'm going to go to maintenance for 12 weeks. Like, that actually, in fact, may be better than trying to do, unless you're you know, a competitor or whatever. Like, I would almost prefer that for somebody than trying to do 6 months and just go, because that's pretty fucking hard. Like, we've all been in preps before that are 6-7 months long. That is a grind. That is so hard. Like my last prep has almost made me hate prep. Like, I don't want to do that. That sucked. It was horrible. I had zero energy. Like, I couldn't even go for like a mile walk. Like, I remember I had to go for I went for a walk with, we were in Calgary. I went for a walk with my wife. We got about maybe 15 minutes into our walk. I looked at her, said I couldn't do this, and ordered an Uber. Like, I literally could not. I had no energy.
Yeah.
And it's just like, no. So like, to have just even it broken up into some of those phases like that, like in a year, you could do quite a bit. That's 2 12-week dieting periods. That's still 6 months of dieting, but mentally you're not trying to just run yourself into the ground. So like, even having a plan like that can be fantastic for someone who just wants to get lifestyle lean. Like, you know, if you can do that and maintain essentially your weight in the maintenance phases, you are still looking at close to 40, 50, 30 pounds lost within those 2 6 months dieting phases, but you're not killing yourself. So yeah, just even looking at it in that sense too, like there's nothing wrong with breaking up those dieting phases. And also then just based on how life goes too, right? Like maybe summers are really busy. All right, let's not diet during summer. Like let's then plan for that quick fall 8 to 10 weeks before Thanksgiving hits. Like there's so many ways that we can do this, like depending on the client and their context. It never has to be all at once.
Yeah. Well, Jess, you got anything else for us?
No, I'm good.
That was a good one.
I know.
Like that was fun. We traveled some roads well. All right, guys. Well, you know the drill with do us a favor and drop a review if you don't mind. If you haven't checked us out over on YouTube, you can watch us talk at you about stuff, and then you get to see all the fun hand gestures that usually accompany a lot of what we're saying when we get all fired up. Oh yeah, and then the faces in the background while someone's talking. Always good stuff. But if you guys ever need anything or have any ideas for us, feel free to reach out. We love the back and forth, and we will talk to you soon.